I seek out UFO, paranormal, occult podcasts. So, on yours, like I was watching it, irregardless of our relationship, and I love the little details. I love your cutaways. I love, all of those things. And something caught my eye is you had a book that said Ummo on it. And I would consider myself pretty versed in the UFO world, but it's a very, not a lot of people know about Ummo. It's not one of those things that you talk about a lot. And I had a very impactful, traumatic experience with the name Ummo and the the Ummo UFO thing. And I reached out to you and I was like, dude, is that what I think? Did I just see an Ummo book? It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and just to catch people up a little bit, because this is something that I've been looking into, especially since Darren had mentioned it and we had agreed on this podcast. I was like, I got to go down this rabbit hole. And, I read almost the first volume of that book, went online. And so to give you a brief little history for those of you at home listening, in the 1960s, these mysterious letters and 70s started popping up around Europe, but especially France and Spain. Now, these letters were typed like with a typewriter, and they all had this little symbol on it known as like the Ummo symbol. Well, Ummo was apparently an extraterrestrial planet that exists, 14.6 million light years away. And these people basically disseminated information from their culture and their sciences and their astronomy throughout these letters and sent them across Europe. Laughable at first.
Yeah, I mean, hundreds of letters.
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting, it did not go to one. It wasn't like one payload. It was multiple payloads to multiple people over multiple places.
Over multiple years in multiple languages.
In decades, yeah. And people started to get together and they would share the letters and they would go through the letters. And what was fascinating is these letters were not only scientific in nature, but they dealt with things that at that time, I mean, you didn't have Google. You couldn't just pull this information down. They were dense. And it really started to make an impact, this idea of Ummo, which I think it started originally with UFO sightings. It started with a few sightings and pictures of someone witnessing a saucer. It's the classic saucer shape in the sky with this really unique H symbol kind of in the bottom of it. And then more people started seeing it. And then the letters started appearing. So I'd never heard of this until 2010. I got lucky to go to Spain, to Barcelona, to shoot a film. And I hear myself telling this story, and I feel like an insane person. And I know that if my mother tunes into this, she'll say, "Stop talking about it. You seem insane." But
you're in the right place.
I know. So my wife, who is, she's avid and speaks Spanish, and she can do Catalan and all of that. And in Barcelona, that's what it is. In this movie, we needed a location that I wanted to be the kind of backdrop, and I wanted a really unique looking house. And I kept getting the location people would send me house after house, and nothing worked. And then I was going through location library, and I found this house, and I said, "That house." And they said, "No, not that house." And I said, "No, that house." And they said, "No, we're not going to go to that house." And after weeks of me turning down the houses, I went back and I said, "This is the house I want." And they finally said, "Listen, we don't recommend, but we'll take you there and show it to you." And immediately, when we arrived, there was this energy on the bus, and everyone was rapidly speaking around me, and I didn't understand what they were saying. And we get out, and some of the people stayed in the bus, and that was my first clue that something was weird.
Whoa!
And I was like, okay, and I get out, and this feels fake. Me telling the story now, I hear it, and I'm like, this bullshit, but it's not. We get out, and there's a man who is a caretaker of the house. And he's kind of pacing back and forth, and it's beautiful. It's on the Mediterranean Sea, and it's surrounded by these mansions. It's beautiful. And we get out, and he talks to the producer, and they're kind of rapidly talking back and forth, and it's getting heated. And I'm seeing the crew. You go on what's called location scouts. There's about 20 or 30 people. You're in a bus, and they're all kind of whispering to each other. And eventually, the caretaker undoes the gate and opens it up, but he won't go inside. And we see him standing out there, and he's smoking. He's like chain smoking. And now I'm seeing more of the crew that are not coming through the gate. Maybe, I don't know, 18 of us went, and there was about 6 or 7 of us that stayed behind. And we get in, and I didn't notice it at first. They opened the door up, and there was like a weight. And by the way, at this point in my life, I've never experienced anything supernatural. I've always wanted to, but I can say I've never seen anything, never felt anything. You walked in this house, and all I can say, there was a heaviness that hit you. And the first thing that was kind of weird is the house was empty, but there were mattresses all over the floor, mattresses in every room, and there was like residual of wax. And then I started noticing there were masks on the ground, and it very much looked like a eyes wide shut party. And I was like, all right, whatever. Like people do that. Is that why people are not coming in? But then I started noticing on all the doorways and all the windows, there was this symbol, and it was an H symbol, but it wasn't an H. It was a weird looking H. And we walked through the house, and I noticed the H's, but it didn't really click with me. And I leave and I say, that's the house I want. And they try to talk me out of it again. And now I'm starting to get upset because why is this production company trying to talk me out of shooting here? I had my wife come back the next day. They were doing another walkthrough. This time it was with what's called G&E or Grip and Electric, where they had to figure out where they were going to put the trucks and pull electricity. And I wanted my wife to go because I wanted to know what they weren't telling me. And in the bus, Laura's like leaning over to me and she says, they're talking about this cult and everyone doesn't want to be disrespectful. They don't want to do these things because of this cult. And I said, what cult? So we get there and there is a prominent H over the front door. And no one wants to go past it. That no one wants to open the door. No one wants to touch the H. And we found out it was something that meant Ummo. And I was like, what is Ummo? And they said, oh, it was a Spanish thing. It was, some people still revere it and they believe in it. And it's not considered polite to move it. And my wife, and this is, walks up to it and pulls it down. And I think she called them something. She said, you guys are a bunch of wussies, and takes it down and throws it kind of on the ground. Let's cut to 24 hours later. My wife is in a hospital. She's hallucinating tremendously. She ended up being bedridden for about 5 days.
Whoa.
That started what I would consider to be the most horrific 10 days of my adult life of just insanity occurring in and around us, where we removed all the H's in the house and we started finding things in the house that didn't make sense.
Did you keep any of those?
No.
Oh.
There are videos online.
It's downstairs.
Oh?
Yeah, so here's what I want you guys to do, and I'm serious about this. I am very superstitious. I don't want any cult stuff here. Get the cult, get that humo stuff and get it out of here.
Now, while this is all happening, I'm sending footage back to the distributor, and they think we're setting it up. And they literally said, is this a publicity thing? And I'm like, no, this is all right now. What you're seeing is real. Now, over the course of the 3 weeks we were in the house, we probably lost a third of the crew members that quit.
No way.
We had one that was pushed down the stairs. It was the second AD who broke his ankle.
Tim, have you had any crazy experiences here yet?
I have not been harmed, I'll say that, but that's miraculous seeing as even our camera woman right now went through her own bit of violent illness when she walked in the house. Then we had a broken foot, we had a severe head trauma twice.
Two severe head traumas.
And a bit of loco-ness.
One of the associate producers quit. The continuity person, who is my right hand on a movie, a continuity person sits with the script and they make sure that I am not forgetting lines in the script. And if someone's holding a drink in the right hand, the next take, it's not in their left hand. She began to have hallucinations and get physically ill. So this is about maybe the 8th or 9th day that we're there. And I start thinking, I still am not going supernatural yet. There's got to be a logical explanation for this. So I asked my assistant to find out if we can have some mold remediation. I want to have the air tested. I was like, if we're in a place that's bad, I want to. This house is very old.
Yeah.
So we do, and it comes back completely clean. And then one of the producers finally comes up to me and tells me what was going on with the guy, the caretaker. And it gets revealed to me that this house was a meeting place for this cult called Ummo. And at that point, I still don't know what Ummo is. And I was spelling it like it was an H, so I'm spelling it H-O-M-M-O.
Like Hummo.
Hummo. And that's not how it's spelled. And so now I'm able to actually go on and research what Ummo is. And which leads me down this rabbit hole of this fascinating UFO thing that took place. And still, I don't want to say it's prevalent, but it's still very much around today.
It's still around. There's still, they call them the Ummites, the people who follow the word of Ummo. And for those of you wondering at home, being like, Well, I mean, obviously, this is just a hoax, right? You're thinking at home, this is obviously just a hoax. But to give you a little bit of context here, I'll just read a few things that have come to light with these documents. And so the letters included diagrams also of these spacecraft, advanced theories of physics, and even philosophical commentary. They run through the language, sociological things, cosmology, absolutely every aspect of their civilization. And what made them different was the consistency and complexity of these letters. So these letters across the board didn't cancel each other out. So if this was a team of people, which a lot of people suspected it was because of the vast reaching sort of knowledge that was, put into these documents, you would have to expect it's a lot of people. But they had concepts in there that weren't even theoretically out there yet in terms of physics. So concepts like communication via neutrinos and early mention of dark matter, which was way ahead of its time at that point. And some of the stuff mimicked cutting edge theories years before they were widely accepted, loosely resembling string theory, neural networks, and multiverse structures. So, if you're a layperson reading this stuff, I tried to. It
hurts,
dude.
It hurts your head, and I think that so now we're a couple of weeks in the shooting of this place, and I find out that it's a UFO cult. And I've always been fascinated with UFOs. I mean, I think the first adult book that I read growing up, and this is 100% accurate, was Communion, because like VHSs, when you grew up in the 80s, you would choose movies based on the box art. I chose books by the box art too. And so when you go see that, that face, that was one of the first, I remember, adult books that I read. So I've been fascinated with UFOs since a kid, but it's something that I felt that I didn't know about. So I became obsessed with figuring out what this house was insane. It had staircases that went nowhere. One of the things, and I think it's in the documentary, if you go on YouTube, there is.
By the way, the movie you were shooting,
11/11/11, which we're going to get, because I want to talk to you about the 11/11 phenomenon. And by the way, for those listening or watching, the movie's terrible. The story that takes, and partially we were talking about this before we began, is I feel like I lost my mind a little bit. It was the one time in my filmmaking career that I went down a rabbit hole I couldn't pull myself out of. And I became obsessed with everything that was happening and me trying to find a rational explanation for it. At this point, I was very much ingrained in the horror world. I loved macabre, but to have it happening all around me, people getting sick, people falling down staircases. One of the things that I think was the most shocking thing to me that had happened, our DP, a guy named Joseph White, I fly him in from Los Angeles, and he hears these stories. I'm telling him, dude, there's a cult here. It's called Ummo, and it was a UFO thing. And he's laughing. He was like, dude, you hear how insane you sound? And I was like, dude, you don't understand. So he arrives 2 days before filming, and I hear him. I'm upstairs, and I hear him come in the door, and he's like, where's Bousman? I want to see this haunted place. And this is, again, it sounds fake, me telling the story. I'm looking down from this I can see down to this very grand entryway. And I was like, yo, Joe. And he looks up and he's like, I still don't believe in this bullshit. And I'll never forget this. I hear a noise, and I hear one of the guys that's on the G&E department tell Joe to move. And almost instantly, the chandelier that was just hung collapses and falls directly where he was just standing.
Oh, my God.
So I'm like, and again, I'm still wrestling with what does supernatural ghost stuff have to do with the UFO cult, which led us to pull the information on the house and the sordid history of this house, which was insane. So during the process of filming, I'm not focused on the movie. I'm focused on the mythology of this house, this Ummo cult. And what I think I found fascinating is, and I was talking to you about this, was not only is there a fascinating story about the origins of Ummo, but it spawned other things, cults, something called Daughters of Ummo, something called, I think it was the Edelweiss Foundation, which was a cult in the true sense of the word, where they were branding kids. It was basically like a Boy Scout thing that started, and they were branding kids with the Ummo sigil on their skin. It got dark, and people went way overboard, basically living by these documents that were, mysteriously produced. And so I just became fascinated, and I think it was one of my first real itches into this world of, trying to uncover the mysterious. And so while I should be making a movie, I am staying up all night and drinking too much scotch, being like, oh my God, listen what happened here with the Ummos and this and this and this. And you can tell when you watch the movie because the movie's pretty bad, but it was crazy. And it was such a little known, I think, we've all heard a lot of the same UFO stories, the Betty and Barney Hill story and all of these, but I'd never heard about Ummo.
Yeah, Ummo is one of those, it's one of the ones that Wendell Stevens, he put out a whole bunch of contact books that I'm obsessed with because, again, these are the lesser known stories, but that are quite extensive in terms of documentation, in terms of sightings. There's even a sighting, I think in 1989 in Russia, and the name eludes me right now, but in Russia, it was witnessed by children and a police officer. So a police officer and a bunch of children witnessed this craft come down. The doors open up, and
The toaster man.
Yeah, there was like this robotic sort of toaster, and that sort of toaster man, you know what that was?
Mm-mm.
That was because apparently the person dressed up as a human would use that to destroy the clothes. So it was like a shredder that followed him around. And then there was this giant sort of three-eyed being with the symbol of Ummo on its torso. This being here.
Well,
Check that out.
oh.
You're a fan of ephemera.
I am. That is, and this is what I think I find so fascinating about this case is I'm fascinated with religion. I'm fascinated with the occult and the esoteric. And I think a lot of it has to, you can start it right here with the research of Ummo. There's a large section of the population that are convinced 100% it was a hoax because the man
Jose Pena
on his deathbed basically admitted to it, and he said, "I did this. I wanted to do an experiment to see that our belief could we convince a population to believe in something just based on faith. We're going to put these documents out." And by the time that he was done, it had taken on a life of its own. It had grown, it had expanded, it had gone across continents, and it was unable to be stopped at that point. But then later, after his death, it was revealed that no, maybe he didn't start it. Maybe he was told to say he started it to basically help keep it mysterious. I mean, you know a lot about that too, about the...
Yeah. So 1993, he came forward to say basically that he was responsible for concocting this thing as a social experiment. Now, Jose Pena is an interesting character because he was a trained psychologist and sociologist with like a deep interest in parapsychology, in fringe physics. Now the debate comes, can one person write all of this? And if you're at home and just you want to look into it, just Google some of the Ummo documents and try to have a read through. It is mind-bendingly difficult to read. And when scientists were given this, there's all sorts of scientists, by the way. There's even a computer scientist, a French computer scientist, Jean-Pierre Petit. He studied Ummo, and he published his own models basically were based off of Ummo. So he had models on magnetohydrodynamics that were based on some of these papers. So they were legitimate theories. They weren't just half-brain concocted ideas. So now you have this guy saying, "Oh, it was me all along. Sorry about that. It was just a big joke." Well, his son went on a rampage.
I heard it at a screening. I don't know if it was Sitges, but there was a film festival.
In 2022.
Yeah, there was a documentary that they basically made on Ummo and Ummites, which, kind of really leaned into the fact it was hoaxed and that it was created by him and two of his friends. And there are some connections that are hard to overlook, like the second sighting of it was from his roommate.
That's right.
So you go down this rabbit hole and there's a lot of connections, but this documentary goes into that. And there was a protest in the middle of the theater. He stopped the screening, as I remember, and was furious.
¿Cómo existe? Y tú no existe, padre. No somos lo suficientemente inteligentes.
Because I guess the son knows it to be real, and the father's dying confession was, I guess, coerced out of him.
That's right.
That it was something that he was. And then there's a lot, if you go really down the rabbit hole, that maybe the CIA was involved, maybe the KGB was involved. It's fascinating because the minute you think you've reached the bottom of this, maybe hoax, maybe conspiracy, it goes far, far deeper and darker. Mentioning these kind of side cults that stem from some of the kind of mythology that these papers purported.